Good morning. It's a beautiful rainy day here in Belleville, and this is Mando from Mando Studio. I'll just show you a little bit around my studio. I have some really great friends that just got me that at Hobby Lobby down in Kentucky. Here's some paintings that I've done. Just a kind of a collection all around. This is kind of my little workspace down here. I teach down here. We do a little bit of everything. There's a collection of my paints. And today I'm going to be showing you all a super easy beach painting. And right here is, I don't buy expensive paints. You can, but you can also use what they sell at your local Walmart or craft store. These are your apple barrels. Now they're a lot thinner than, say, I'll show you these over here. These studio paints, which if you're working with palette knives or wanting a thicker paint, then definitely invest in a little bit more higher quality acrylic paint. But we are painting in acrylics today. We're going to be using 3 brush sizes. Going to be using a 3/4 inch flat. Going to be using I believe this is a number 7 round. And we're going to be using a number 3 round, okay, a little finer brush. I'm using a 9x12 stretched canvas, and my painter's palette is a cheapo plate, and I got a cup of water for rinsing my brush and diluting paint and such, and we will get started. Okay, we're getting ready to start on this canvas, beach scene. Wanted to show you my palette here. I got a little bit of yellow, a little bit of pink, kind of like an aqua blue, little bit of a bright blue and a white, and that's how we're going to do our sky. So I'm using my big brush, my flat 3/4 inch flat. I'm getting a little water on it just to get the bristles nice and wet, and I'm going to go right into my white and that light sky blue, and I'm just going to start using the width of my brush. And I'm not going heavy with it. I want it to kind of skip over the canvas like this. You get more of a realistic sky. A little bit more water, dab it. A little bit more white, a little bit more sky blue. Now, at some point, we got to decide where our water line and our sky line kind of meet. So I'm just kind of roughing it in there, and I'm turning my brush here on this skinny edge. See it there? And I'm using that to kind of lay that line in there just to kind of show me where I want to be. Excuse me for my congestion. I'm fighting the seasonal cold. Okay, so the sky looks pretty awesome just like that. But I want to make it look a little bit more realistic. So I'm going to pick up some of that darker bright blue. And I'm just picking up very little on my brush. See there? And I'm going towards the top because I tend to put my darker colors towards the top here. So I need a little bit more. I'm just picking it up on the corner. And my background is nice and damp. And when it's damp like this, you can really blend colors and work nicely on a sky, water, any kind of background that's really fluid. I'm going to go ahead and paint this top edge because I like to paint all the way around my canvas so I don't have to frame them. And I'm just going to drag this around. I try to teach my students to do that. Now, if you plan on framing it, there's no point in painting that edge. But when you're hanging it just by a thumbtack, say you got a seasonal wall you like to hang paintings on like I do, it's a no commitment, or use a contact strip hanger. Okay, so get my water line in there. It doesn't have to be perfect because I'm going to paint over that edge. Okay, so I got a little darker blue in there. I just want to touch more like right here. Okay. Now, we can get fun with this sky. By all means, it's beautiful just the way it is. We could let it dry, go in, put some clouds, do whatever. But while it's damp, I want to make kind of like a really bright, fun beach sky. And so I'm gonna pick up a little bit of yellow on the corner of my brush, and right in these lighter areas, I'm barely touching the canvas, y'all. I'm like barely touching this canvas. And I just want to lay in a little bit of yellow. A little bit goes a long way. By all means, do not, because the more you put on there, it's going to look green. Blue and yellow make green. So I'm going to kind of keep this yellow down here, maybe at the horizon for the most part, and make it look like, you know, maybe this is just right after dawn, or maybe even towards evening. Now I'm going to do the same thing with the pink, picking it up on the corner of my brush. And the pink is going to take over, so the less you use, the better. It's going to almost create that real pretty kind of sunset sky. And I'm just using very, very little. Of course, it's y'all's painting. Y'all use as much as you want or as less as you want. I'm happy with the way that sky is right now. So I'm going to let that dry. I'm going to wash my big brush. I'm going to bounce it here in my cup. And I always bounce it in the bottom hold on to my cup. Get all that paint out. And put it on. I have a washcloth here. I use old washcloths. I'm going to dry this. I use a blow dryer to dry my paintings, and then we'll come back and start on the water. Okay, so we're back. The magic of videography, sorry. We're going to start on our water. Now, I want to use that same bright blue, the darker of the two, on my plate here. I'm going to use that darker blue. And if you want to use like a navy blue to really darken the water, you can. You can also use a spot of black, but you want to be very careful with the black. I'm going to go ahead and get some black on my plate just to have it on there because I'm going to need it here in a little bit. So I'm going to take my big brush, a little water on it, dab it off on my rag, okay? And I'm going to pick up that darker blue. Now I'm using that thin edge, and I'm going to kind of trace in here where my water line is. Okay? Now, the horizon of water is always a straight line. Getting that line straight can be a challenge. Eyeball it the best you can. If you want to use a ruler, by all means, you can. I like to just eyeball it. If it's a little crooked, I'll get back from it and kind of straighten it out there. Okay. So wrap your water around your edge just like you did your sky. All right. Now I'm just dragging what paint's left in my brush all the way down. You hear how it's skipping over that canvas? That's because I don't have much paint or liquid in my brush, and that's fine. I just want to try to get that as nice and smooth as possible. Now you can already see where it's kind of ombre. It goes from dark to light. That's exactly what we want, and I've achieved that just with that color by itself by just starting heavy at that line and just letting it work down. I had enough water in my brush that it diluted it as I went. Okay, so now if you want to add more colors or some darker areas or lighter areas in your water, now would be the time to do it. So I'm going to always try to go edge to edge too, because see, if you do this, you're putting brush strokes. So I try to go edge to edge. I'm going to straighten up that edge right there a little bit. Now my water's pretty wet down here, so I'm just kind of giving it a stroke there. Okay, I like it. So now I'm going to pick up a little bit of white. I never wash my brush. Don't wash your brush unless I tell you to wash your brush, okay? I'm going to go down here towards the end. I'm going to pick up my canvas a little bit so rest it on the edge of my canvas here. And I'm going to pick up this white, and I'm picking up a good bit. And this is where the water is hitting the shoreline, okay? So it can be kind of more on one side, like, you know, like there's a wave coming up. Sorry about that. Like there's a wave coming up on that side. And now I'm just blending up with that white, if you noticed, okay? So see how it really lightened up this down here? So that's like right at the beach's edge, all right? So I want to wrap this around my edge here. Got the blue on my brush. So everything matches. We'll go ahead and do this side. So everything matches. All right. Okay, so now at this point, if you want any other color in it as far as the darkness up here, you can pick up a little bit more of that dark blue on your brush. I'm going to put up a little bit and just kind of go up in here just as if the water is really darkening towards the horizon. The further you go back, the darker your water. The further you go that way, the closer you are to the water, the lighter it is. So I'm happy with it. I'm gonna wash my brush, bounce it in my water there, put it on my paper, and I'm going to stop the video right here. We're going to dry this, and then we're going to start putting in some sand and stuff. Okay, so we're back. I have picked up this little bit of a lighter brown. I'm going to show you on camera here. It's cinnamon brown, so it's a fairly lighter brown. And again, I'm going to pick up my big brush, going into a little bit of water, dab it off on my rag. And down here, I want to put the illusion of sand, like just at the sandy edge of the water here. But I also, since this side seems to be a little bit lighter, I want to make my sand coming up and coming down like this. Okay, so like we're similar, right at the water's edge almost. So I'm going to pick up very little brown on my brush. Can you see that? Okay. And I'm going to lay in here using that thin edge, kind of where my sand would be. Now, I know you're saying, well, I can see the blue through that. Yep, you can. That's okay. It's sand. We got this. Okay. No right or wrong way. If you went a little higher, it's okay. There's probably a little bit of a sand dune. It's okay. All right. Now, I'm going to pick up just a little bit more brown. No more water on my brush. And I'm just going to let that lay in there. Now I'm going to turn this to the side here. Do my brown around the edge. Set it back down here. Actually, I'm going to do my brown all along the bottom here while I can, because I took my sand all the way over. Okay. And then I'm going to set that back on that edge so I can work on it. Yeah, you can see it. Okay. I have to keep checking my camera to make sure you all can see what I'm seeing. All right. All right, this is a very easy, no fuss type of painting. You can make, if you don't have that color brown, you can make it with a darker brown, a little white, a little yellow. If you don't have that color blue, use the blue you have. If you have a navy, you can add a little white to it. If you have, let's say, a phthalo blue, you can make it work by diluting it a little bit. Use the colors you have. Don't run out and have to buy the colors I'm using, you know, like bright blue, and this is the Doris turquoise. By all means, you do not have to buy. Use what you have. And if you have these colors, wonderful. You can make pink. You can make all of these colors out of your primary colors. So, you know, a little red and white makes pink. You have a nice yellow. You can dilute it. Put a little white with it. By all means, you do not have to have my color palette here. You can just use what you have on hand and it'll be beautiful. It's art. Okay, so I'm gonna wash my brush. I like my sand the way it is. I'm gonna give that a quick dry, and then we're gonna come back and start adding some more details. Okay, so we're back. I'm taking my clean big brush, and I'm going into that brown again, just a little bit on my, and I'm going right here at the bottom, kind of working up in this corner, because the sand is probably a little bit darker towards us than it is, say, at that water's edge. there's no right or wrong way to this. If you get it in there, great. You just want your sand to be nice and brown. If you find you're picking up color from the bottom, you didn't let it dry long enough, or you're using too much water in your brush and you're kind of erasing the paint, okay? I'm gonna wash that brush. And now, since I'm gonna let my sand dry, I'm gonna take my clean brush, my big brush here, and I'm gonna go up here with a little bit of white in the sky. I'm picking up very little paint. I mean, very little paint. And I'm gonna kind of give the illusion of wispy clouds. Now, I didn't have, obviously, enough water in my brush here. So I'm gonna dab off, get most of the paint out of my brush and most of the water. And I'm gonna I want those to be almost transparent. Translucent or transparent. So when I stretch that white, see how wet they are? They're a really damp cloud. But when that dries, it's going to blend in to where you barely see that cloud. I'm going to add a little bit more white just because I took out almost too much. Okay. And don't get too carried away with these clouds. Maybe one or two. Now you might be using a way bigger canvas than I am. You might be using like a 16 by 24 or 16 by 20 or 18 by 24. So I've got a couple clouds in there. While I'm sitting here with that white on my brush, I'm gonna go ahead in here and give some, I'm barely touching the canvas, y'all. I mean barely. See how my brush is kind of spread apart? Just picking up some white in that edge. Right there, you can see it. And I'm skipping it on my canvas, almost like tickling the canvas with the top of that brush. This is almost like a dry brush effect. Just those little ripples in the water that signify like little waves coming in, okay? Might be a few out here breaking over. We're not going to get too carried away with all that white, okay? By all means, you can go into that darker blue. Same amount. I mean, I've just got a smidge on there, dabbing it off on my rag. And you can go in here and add some darker, if you didn't get that dark enough. Actually, I'm pretty dark back here, so you can drag some of those darker ones even down here into your lighter areas. See here, I'm just barely touching that canvas. Okay, see there? I'm gonna wash that big brush, and I'm gonna stop y'all right here and dry my sand, and we'll be back. Okay, y'all, we're back, and I'm gonna move my camera just a little bit there. Let me kind of zoom in. There we go. All right, so we're going to work down here in this corner. I've dried this. And you can tell when your canvas is dry because it looks matte. It's not shiny anymore from being wet. Okay, and I've added a couple colors to my palette. I've put like a green on here. It's called a holiday green, and I put some burnt umber on there, which is a darker brown. And I'm going to use that same big brush. Now, by all means, you can use a smaller flat for this, which would be like, let me grab one here out of my can. Sort of like this right here. Oh, sorry. Sort of like this right here. And you can do your fence post with that. We're going to put a fence post in here, but I'm going to use my big brush, just show you so you can see how versatile this big brush can be. I'm going to pick up with this brush, I'm going to pick up white, a little bit of black, and a little bit of burnt umber all at the same time. Now, you can see it's the way it's on my brush. I've got the white, the black, and the burnt umber's kind of down in there. And I'm going to just go over here. I'm going to wing it. By all means, you can draw yours on with some chalk. And I don't want this post straight up and down. You know, it's been weathered, hurricanes have hit it, the paint's come off of it, it's old and decrepit, so I'm going to angle it even more like this, like it's almost fallen over. Okay? And I'm putting that in there. And I'm going to kind of even like put the top up a little bit here, like it's, and then I'm turning that brush on its little skinny edge. And I'm bringing that down. Now, although that looks good the way that is, I'm dabbing it off on my rag. I want that to have a little bit more dark in it. So I'm picking up just the burnt umber and a smidge of the black by itself. And I'm going, just dragging that in there with that big brush. I'm kind of using the edge. I want a little bit more black, so I'm just picking up a little black on the corner of my brush here. By all means, we can go in here and tweak this with the little brush here in a little bit. But I like to try to get as much done as I can with that big brush. Okay, so we got an old post that's hanging there. And we want to make another one sort of over here at the edge like it's fallen off the canvas. And maybe one that's kind of laying down here. All right, so same thing, a little white, little burnt umber, a little bit of black. And this one I'm going to really make fallen. You can put it like a little knot in there, like it's, you know, because all these old fences aren't. And then I'm going to repeat a little black and a little bit of burnt umber. Just darken it up a bit. And again, we can go back in and, you know, change these up a little bit. I'm going to go put another one over here, a little burnt umber, a little bit of black, a little bit of white. And I'm going to do this one off the canvas. See there, I'm not even got all my brush on that canvas there. Okay, so we've got 3 fence posts here. I'm going to put a little bit of black in that one right there just to make it look like it's old, weathered. Put a little bit more in this one. Just kind of like it's shadowed down this side. All right, I'm happy with the way those are. So I'm going to wash this big brush. And we're kind of done with it for a little bit. We're going to move to our next size brush. And that is that smallest brush, that size 3 round. Right now, while those are wet, I'm going to go into a little bit of white. I didn't get my brush wet or anything. I'm just going in and I'm going to start, you know how these old posts have that real gray look to them. I'm barely using the tip of my brush on that canvas. I am just barely touching it, just making the weathered look. Barely touching that canvas. Just a little bit of white will do you right here. Going over to this one. This one didn't have nearly the coloring in it. You get that old gray kind of barn lumber look. Okay? I'm just taking the excess paint off my brush on my rag. Now I'm going to pick up that burnt umber. Kind of do the same thing here. Just, you know, I want maybe some like areas of that burnt umber till you're satisfied with your boards or your fence, okay? Don't worry about this sand down here. We're going to fix that. We got to get these old posts done. Now, for a little bit of black, I just wiped my brush off. Never washed it. I didn't put no water on my brush. A lot of these have splits in them. And so I kind of go up here towards the top and I push down and then barely pick up my brush. And just make almost like there's an old split in that log or that fence post. I keep calling them logs. Same again, a little bit more black. I'm just, you know, touching that wood. Over here, you can see this one has a little bit of a crevice right here. So I'm taking that black and I'm going to play on that a little bit. And then here's kind of a knot. So I'm just kind of, all right. And over here, the same way. Just barely. That paint's wet, so, and I'm pretty happy with that. So now you can wash your brush. And I call these almost illusion paintings because you're going to be back away from them when they're hanging on the wall. Everybody's going to know that's a fence, okay? Everybody's going to know that's an old pier fence, you know, that's hanging out there at the beach. So I'm going to go ahead and give these a quick dry, and then we're going to come back and start adding more detail. All right, we're back. So now I'm moving to my bigger brush. That bigger round. This one was a 7. By all means, you could use an 8, a 9, a 10, a 12. Just if you use a bigger brush, just be careful with the tip that you're not pushing down too hard, or you're going to get a really huge finish, and you don't want that, okay? So I got some more burnt umber on my plate, some more of that lighter brown. I'm going to take the lighter, or the white and the lighter brown, and I'm just, I picked them up together on my brush, but I'm just kind of tapping them on my plate so you can kind of see it on my brush there. I got the light brown, the white. And I want the illusion of an old rope. So I'm going to bring this kind of to there. And then like it's wrapping around this post and coming over here and wrapping around. Let me get some more of my color I made. Okay. And then it's, you know, however you want to bring it out, you can bring it down and around, and like it's just hanging off the edge here. Okay. Now, while that's still a little wet, I'm picking up some of the burnt umber, and I'm just going to touch the bottom edge of that rope while it's wet, just to kind of shade it. And now you see how light I'm touching this canvas, because if I press too much pressure with this round brush, I'm going to have an extra wide rope, and that's not what we want. Okay, so I'm using that dark brown at the bottom of my rope here. Okay, now I'm dabbing off the color off of my brush, and I'm picking up a little bit of white on my brush, and I'm just going to start as very light using the tip of that brush. Can't even really see it, but there you can. And I'm just touching the highlights of that rope, like the upper part, okay? And then I'm going to go in with a little bit of the burnt umber and a dab of black. More burnt umber than black. We're looking for the color of coffee, kind of like espresso. And I'm just going to kind of give little tick marks. Just the illusion that this is rope. Again, this is a super detailed painting. This is for beginners, and this is so you can be proud of you created a nice landscape, and it doesn't require a lot of techniques that you may not know how to use with brushes and things. So I'm happy with the way that looks. It kind of looks like a snake, but that's okay. From a distance, it's going to look like a rope. You, by all means, you can take, I washed my big brush just now, or my round brush. You can take that little brush, go in with a little bit of white if you want, and, you know, highlight some of those so it doesn't look so snakish. Or you can just leave it the way it was, okay? Rope is very forgiving. You can even kind of blend it. See where I was kind of blending all those in, and not make it look so snakish, but it still looks like a rope, okay? It's kind of what I want right there. All right, so I'm gonna wash that little brush. Now, back to that bigger round, that 7. Dry brush. I am going to my sand color, that lighter brown, and I'm just using the tip of that brush to drag some sand up over where those posts go in the ground, okay? Taking it up to the water's edge there a little bit, all right? All right, right there. And then I'm gonna pick up a little bit of the burnt umber, just a little bit on the tip to make it look like those posts are casting a shadow. And while that sand's wet is the best time to do this so it blends. Okay. Alright, let me take a gander at what that looks like. Yep, I like it. Wash that brush. Now, at this point, you can do the grass that we're going to do right now. While this is wet, it's fine because it makes that brown kind of blend with the green. And I'm going back to my smaller brush. It's a clean brush. I'm going straight into the green. I'm not mixing the green with anything. And you might want to practice this on a paper, piece of paper next to you, tablecloth, whatever you have, plastic tablecloth. It's a light touch, and I'm starting at the base and I'm pulling up and lifting at the same time, okay? If you have trouble doing that, by all means, you can turn your canvas around like this and pull them down and lifting as you pull down, okay? So I'm just doing, and grass all grows different heights and different lengths. Okay. Now I'm pulling it right out of that sand, and some of that brown is going up into the green. That's what we want. Just picking up a little bit here, just like it's growing around an old sawgrass or whatever it's called. These aren't exactly sea oats. It's just that old grass that kind of gets that brown. And now that I have a little bit of the grass like that, I'm going to pick up some of that sand color, that brown, and go ahead and pull it up into that green. So my grass isn't all bright, because some of that grass gets scorched by the sun and it's dying. So you want some of that darker grass, the brown, like it's dead, dying. Okay, I'm going to turn this back around so you can kind of see what I got going on here. All right, so you can see how just a little bit is growing up around these posts. All right, you wash that little brush. Now, at this point, it's a done painting. We can go in and add birds, little, seagulls flying. You could, if you want to get fancy and paint a seagull sitting on one of those posts, you can. You could do some little seashells down here in the edge of the sand. You can lighten up your sand using that, which I think I'm going to do because that sand's still wet. Picking up very little white. And I'm just going to give, while that sand is still a little wet, I'm going to put a little bit of white down there in my, see how much of a difference that made already? So I'm happy with the way it is. I'm going to pop in a couple little birds, and I'm going to use that smallest brush and a little bit of black. And these are the birds that we learned to draw in grade school. The little V birds, I call them, or the little M's. Something like that right there. If you want to put a sailboat off in the distance right now, that would be a good time to do it. We always start from the back and work to the front when we do these acrylic paintings. This is a super fast painting. I know I've stopped the video several times, but you could paint this as a gift and give it to somebody. I'm going to go in. I just seen right here that I really love how this old post looks, but I just want to highlight that knot just a little bit here. Okay, so I went back in and added that. Over here, I want to highlight, I'm using a little bit of white and a little bit of burnt umber. And I want to kind of highlight that crack. See there? And maybe take a little bit of white and burnt umber and kind of go over here. Just so that post isn't by itself. All right, I'm going to wash my brush. Right now we can call it done, and I'm going to sign my name here in the corner. I turned it towards me a little bit, so all right, so I signed it Mando there in the corner, and I'm going to call this one done. This is a quick beach landscape. I hope you try it.